Hello everyone, my name is Josh, and I'll be doing 10 days of JavaScript's problem, day 8 buttons container. So like the last video, I'm going to give the answer and explain how to perform it because I think doing it itself, like little by little, like typing it all up will take time. We want to create 9 buttons enclosed in a div and laid out so they form a 3x3 grid. Each button has a distinct label from 1 through 9. And the labels and outer buttons must rotate in the clockwise direction each time we click this middle button. So we see what it looks like right here, guys, and it has certain element IDs. You can see that the HTML buttons labels has the following IDs right here as seen, and the documents elements must have the following styles. These are the styles that we'll work with, and each time a button is clicked, we rotate these buttons. So we use, and this is some information on how to reference a CSS file and a JavaScript file. Explanation of how it works. I think you can tell, like, once you click on it, it moves one square clockwise. Usually what I like to work on first in these kind of problems, I'm no web developer, but I feel like it's easier to start with the CSS file because we know straight up what styles we want to use, and then we could decide how it works from there. So each button from button 1 through 9 satisfies the following. It has these properties. Now you might be wondering, okay, how do we reference each of these buttons from 1 through 9? What I could do is I'll put them all under a certain style in a certain class that if one of these container elements references a class of button, see, using dot means class of the name of button. It has these certain properties, which is the width is 30%, the height is 48 pixels, the font size is 24 pixels. And we have the style for the button container itself. The button container's divs IDs must be buttons as well. What did I put for your width is 75%. I think, yep, there it is. Width of buttons. So the document's body's widths. So this percentage right here references the whole document, and the relative size of that, its width should be within 75%. So all these buttons here should take up 75% of the width of the document page itself. Now we want to go through more of the details. Now we want to define what sort of content goes into the HTML. As I mentioned in the previous video, an HTML document specifies in the body what sort of behavior or contents you want to include within the website. And the head describes the type of styles or how it will be looking like. It could like give a sort of pattern of what the elements will look like when displayed. I already showed you CSS already. Now let's just go to the body of elements. There will be 9 elements, and they each have their own inner HTMLs of 1 through 9 with the following IDs. Now, to create this, let's see. Before I mentioned in a previous video that I said that you could add the elements with the JavaScript. I'm going to show you another example of adding elements into the HTML tag, which is literally hard coding it in itself. So you can see here, I created a div because these div tags would contain all these buttons, and it's also within directions that the div, these buttons should be contained in the container called a div tag. Now I give it the ID of buttons and the class of button container, just so that I could reference its style later on. And I think we already mentioned here the button container should be a width of 75%. So right away you could tell that I added the class equals button container. So now that style is already laid out for this div. Now for each button, I just respectively follow the directions. It says right here that it has its own set of values for inner HTML and the respective IDs. So 1 is button 1, 2 is button 2. I did the same thing here. 1, 1, 2, 2, 3, 3, 4, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I've made them in their default positions to look like this in the following. So when it's laid out, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Laid out like this. Now you might be wondering, okay, how did you ensure that it's a 3 by 3 row? So what I did was I did it with a 30% for each button, 30, 60, 90. And I think by how you style or lay it out, it's going to automatically adjust so that each of these elements will fit within the 100% limit of the page via width. And if it doesn't fit, it goes to the next line. In this case, if I render this right here, you can see that if it doesn't fit all the way, it just goes to the next line and adds the buttons as follows. That's why I added in the specific order as following. So if I switch it around, 6, 5, you can see that it's going to mess up the order. 6, 5. So the order does matter, the way you put the elements into the page. And you might be wondering why I put this ID equals button 1, class equals to button. Now the ID is because the requirement says I should put them as button 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And also for class, I want to make sure I can reference the properties for the styling. Now, another reason why I gave them these specific ID values is that now the characteristic is if we hit the middle button, all the respective buttons will rotate clockwise. So right away, it's helpful to have that button 5. Since it remains the same, it will be referenced by the ID of button 5 right here. Button 5 equals document.getElement by ID. So right away, the reference it's storing is button 5's, the button with the ID of button 5, its memory right here. And once you click on it, each of the buttons surrounding it, I call them via button 1.innerHTML, button 2, button 3. And this sort of syntax right here demonstrates how you can move it clockwise by one button around the document 5 by just literally just first we take the first value of the square, and then for the respective squares later on, we just reassign their values to the next square going clockwise. These buttons reference the ID specified within each of these buttons right here. So that it makes it easier to just simply reassign it. Alright, so if I hit submit and continue, you would see that I would get a perfect 25 score. So far it works. And hit view results. You can see that it goes through all the scenarios. Alright guys, otherwise that's the answer. Feel free to pause in certain points of the video and then use these these answers, or go over the answers over and over again to help you understand how it works. Please like and subscribe if you like this type of content. I know you guys probably prefer if I walk through each part, but it can take a while. I prefer to see if we could go faster just for the sake of everyone else's time. Alright guys, well, stay healthy and good luck on your interviews or your tests. Hope this helps.